We all do it. The problem is how to get rid of it. Nowadays our sewage systems are so clean and efficient, we hardly give them a second thought. But the compulsion to get rid of our feces and our urine has always presented us with an irresistible challenge. Back in the supposedly genteel Victorian era, going to the loo was rather more indiscriminate than today. Few houses had a water closet installed. Gentlemen took matters into their own hands when the need took them. Ladies with a full bladder also had to improvise, but more discreetly.
The Victorians were so frightened and afraid of discussing anything to do with bodily fluids that it held back an awful lot of sanitation developments. It prevented people from properly discussing what should be done with sanitary problems, with sewers, even prevented many people from wanting a water closet or even a bath or a wash basin in the first place. So this sort of reserve held back sanitation developments.
Lavatory technology is pretty well as old as civilization. We found stone-built lavatories from as far back as 4000 BC on the islands of Orkney, a settlement called Skara Brae. That was a Neolithic settlement, and then in 1700 BC, King Minos of Crete proved himself an excremental visionary. Why? Because he had the first designer loo in history, a lovely wooden seat, and flushing water as well. King Minos and the Greeks handed the sanitary baton to the Romans, who then created toilets for all the citizens. When the Romans came to Britain in AD 43, they brought with them not only their civilization, but also their sanitation. In fact, you can still see today the ruins at Hadrian's Wall of the latrines they laid out at a place called Housted's Fort. What better after a busy day defending the empire than to sit down together and defecate?
They solved the problem of where you have a concentration of a lot of people living in one small area, the whole place after a while starts to stink. They built special communal use latrines. Underneath the stone seats were channels through which the stream was diverted through them to wash them out. There was another little channel in front of the users. They had short wooden sticks with a sponge wrapped on one end, and you would dabble the stick with the sponge in the water, clean yourself with it, and then put it back for the next person. And it's said from that we get the expression, to get hold of the wrong end of the stick.
The Romans left Britain in around AD 410, and they took their sanitary engineering with them. The Saxons, well, they were none too choosy in their lavatorial habits. Londoners happily reverted to type.
God I lose!
You could be fined for chucking your slops out of the window like that. But thanks to the Normans, there was a French warning you could shout out, Gardez-l'eau, literally translated, watch out for the water, and actually the origin of the word loo. One other thing, what was the real reason a gentleman was meant to walk on the outside of a pavement and a lady on the inside? Well, it was because a gentleman, if he really was that, would be prepared to get the projectiles in the neck when they came out of the window and protect his fair lady. Until late Victorian times, the street remained a public convenience. Sherborne Lane in East London was a favourite. It was commonly known as Shiteborne Lane.
You had to make use of any facility that you could find if you needed to go to the loo. So it would have been, from that point of view, very, very smelly in certain parts of the city. When it was raining, the rainwater would carry away the waste down to the riverside. It would flow down these open channels to the river.
London's polluted streams and rivers fed the city's waste into the Thames. The Fleet, the Tyburn, Stamford Brook became sewers. And as the city spread, these ancient rivers were gradually covered over to flow underground. Tudor and Stuart London was choking up with human excrement. Each household had to find a way of disposing of their disgusting waste. They needed a hole, and they found one. Their own cellars. The famous diarist Samuel Pepys came across these subterranean deposits firsthand.
Going down into the cellar, of which I find that Mr. Turner's house of office is full and comes into my cellar, I put my feet into a great heap of turds.
Samuel Pepys's gruesome discovery was typical. His neighbour's cesspool was in dire need of emptying.
Well, for many hundreds of years, almost the only sanitary facilities as such were cesspools. The cesspools were emptied by gong firmers. They're men who would arrive at night with a horse-drawn cart called a honey cart. And of course, in the built-up areas, frequently the whole lot had to be carried in buckets straight through the middle of people's houses.
Cesspools were a lucrative business for the gong firmers. They were not only well paid by house owners to remove the waste, but it was then transported out of London and sold to farmers as manure at a profit. It was a cramped and filthy job. Sometimes entrances were so small that children had to be squeezed into them.
The gong firmers had a very unpleasant job, but they were paid very, very well for it. They were on something like 2 or 3 times the weekly wage of a skilled man. But they had to work all night in the dark, and they had to shovel poo about for a living.
London grew rapidly. In 1700 it had a population of only 500,000, but the Industrial Revolution created a mass migration to the city for jobs. By 1850 there were 2.5 million Londoners. The gong firmers charged more because they had to travel further to dispose of the waste. Landlords dispensed of their services. More sewage was left to fester in the cesspools. London cesspools filled up and overflowed into the streets, and then more by luck than design into the sewers and eventually the River Thames. London sanitation in the 19th century, hardly advanced in 400 years, was in a state of crisis. And there was a new menace looming.
Your youngest isn't the only one with a creative side. And it's not just your eldest who can express himself. Impressing the neighbours shouldn't be left to your other half. And your auntie needn't be the only one to bring the exotic into the house. Get creative. Sharwood's stirring stuff.
Finding the right mortgage or investments or insurance is really difficult. There are literally thousands on the market. What would be incredibly helpful would be someone who knows the market inside out and gives honest advice. That's where Bradford and Bingley come in. Tell them what you need, and they'll search the market, big companies and small. And they'll bring you a selection of the best options, so you'll get one that's perfect for you. And the brilliant name for this service? The Marketplace at Bradford and Bingley.
Come on, Messy. New Flash will now clean it in half the time of any other all-purpose liquid, and little accidents are a doddle. He makes as much mess as you. Shh, quiet. Collect Lilo and Stitch toys with Flash. See special offer packs for details.
If you're like me, you hate having your teeth out for long. Real cleaning doesn't come much quicker than this baby. With Sterident 3 minutes, active oxygen bubbles go everywhere, cleaning more effectively than any toothbrush. 3 minutes of powerful antibacterial activity, and my teeth feel spotless. Oh, yes. Sorry, Mustache. Got to catch the morning canoes. Sterident 3 minutes. Get your teeth into life.
28-inch flat screen Dolby Pro Logic surround sound, DVD and Super VHS. How much do you reckon it costs?
849.
1,050.
No, 849. come on, and don't forget your keys.
JVC 28-inch TV package for under £850.
What do you mean 849?
New trainers to help her run fast and win gold at the Olympics, £22. Books to help her learn to read and become a best-selling author, £30. Globe so she can study geography, which will come in handy when she's Prime Minister, £25. Remembering to take it one day at a time, priceless. There are some things money can't buy. For everything else, there's MasterCard. Accepted wherever your dreams take you.
Experience the enchantment as Disney on Ice proudly presents Beauty and the Beast. Belle, Beast and all of their friends from your favourite love story are live on ice. Disney on Ice proudly presents Beauty and the Beast. An enchanted fairy tale awaits you. Playing at the National Indoor Arena from the 30th of October to the 10th of November.
So what do you think?
I think I'm in love with this floor.
This glueless laminate flooring is our lowest price ever. For our lowest price flooring ideas, Homebase.
19th century London grew rapidly to 2.5 million people by 1850. Speculative builders erected the back-to-back houses and tenements for the poor. There were no mod cons. The cesspools and privies overflowed. There was no central organised plan for how to dispose of human effluent. It was all a further strain on London's already chaotic drainage system. A sanitary reformer, Hector Gavin, investigated the conditions of the poor in Bethnal Green, East London.
On entering number 23 Shacklewell Street, the smell was most offensive and was compared to that from a common vault in which the dead had long been retained. It seemed to me to arise from some foul drain below the floor of the house. It is scarcely possible to conceive the utter degradation of the human mind which permits the disgusting offensiveness of the abominable nuisance of common privies.
London's cesspits were not only fragrant, they were overflowing. So in 1815, Parliament passed an act enabling the effluent to be pumped straight into the Thames. This was in fact a bad idea, and one that later proved fatal, because, ironically, of the rediscovery of the domestic toilet.
No one man can really be credited with inventing the loo. It developed over hundreds or even arguably thousands of years. But the closest we get to an inventor is Sir John Harrington, who produced his Ajax water closet in 1592. Behind the seat there was a cistern full of water, and there was a pipe between the cistern and the pan. And you pulled the plug out, and that emptied all the water out of the cistern into the bowl, and you pulled another plug out, and that emptied everything out of the bowl into a cesspit. So, really quite recognisably, a water closet. However, sadly, as far as we know, he only made two. One for himself, at his own house at Culston near Bath, and the other one for his godmother, Queen Elizabeth I.
And then in 1778, a Yorkshire carpenter called Joseph Brammer patented a new water closet which could be mass-produced. And from the late 18th century onwards, the water closet became a kind of middle-class status symbol. Instead of buying a BMW to impress the neighbours, you bought a water closet and made sure that they used it.
But the WC was not yet exactly ubiquitous. For one thing, toilet design was hardly a polite topic of conversation in Victorian drawing rooms. Indeed, the smallest room was hidden from view. Thank you. Britain was not yet flushing en masse. But 1851 and the Great Exhibition afforded one man the opportunity to change all that.
George Jennings, who was a great sanitary pioneer of the time, approached Prince Albert and the Royal Commissioners who were constructing the Crystal Palace and the Great Exhibition, and offered to build a public convenience for nothing. He built the world's first public loos and had white-coated attendants inside charging 1 penny for their use. And it's from that we get the story To Spend a Penny.
The Great Exhibition was the final straw, because people visiting the Great Exhibition, experiencing the water closet for the first time, went home, installed them in their own homes, and so you have a modern device, the water closet, being attached to what was still basically a medieval sewage disposal system. So most of London's underground streams and wells were being polluted by leakage from cesspools and sewers. So a poor person who went and drew water from a well was almost certainly drinking his neighbour's excrement.
Londoners continued to draw water from wells which had every chance of being contaminated by leaking cesspools. By the 1850s, water was being piped to the houses of the better off. If anything, this made matters worse.
All of London's sewage flowed into the River Thames. The Thames, of course, is a tidal river, so the sewage simply flowed up and down as far as Teddington, which is as far as the tide goes. 6 of the water companies had intakes to their waterworks on the tidal river. So they were literally drawing in the sewage of, by the middle of the 19th century, 2.5 million people and piping it into their homes.
With reputations and profits at stake, the water companies vigorously defended the quality of their supplies. Dr. Pearson of the Grand Junction Water Company proclaimed the elevating properties of Thames water.
The impregnating ingredients of the Thames are as perfectly harmless as any spring water of the purest kind in common life. Indeed, there is probably not a spring, with the exception of the Malvern, so pure as Thames water.
It was advisable to be careful to actually examine the water before you drank it. I mean, if you poured water into a glass and you held it up to the light, you'd almost certainly see horrid things floating around in it.
And here it is, a typical glass of Thames water from the early 19th century. It's an intoxicating cocktail of human effluent and industrial waste. Some of the more responsible water companies tried to filter it through sand, but that didn't eradicate what was hidden in the liquid: cholera.
The cholera bacterium arrived from India in 1831, killing more than 6,000 in the first outbreak. Areas like Hampstead, higher up with purer water supplies, were relatively unscathed. But down in the overcrowded city, cholera would hit rich and poor alike, and with devastating effect.
Cholera is a disease that involves the gut. In it, the patient loses lots and lots of diarrhea stools. This loss of water, in its turn, affects the other organs of the body. The kidneys don't have enough water to operate, and so gradually the patient becomes slowly unconscious, feeling very unwell, looking drawn, sunken eyes. In fact, the skin can go a dark colour, and gradually the patient will lapse into unconsciousness and eventually die.
Cholera swept through London with the most terrifying speed. A victim could be perfectly healthy at breakfast, drinking a glass of water, and by night time the same day, dead.
Cholera's cause was a mystery. Some thought it came up through the ground. Others thought it was a build-up of atmospheric electricity. Those were just 2 of the theories peddled by physicians at the time. Desperate victims would try any cure. One man offered them mustard. Another even swore by tobacco enemas.
There were a whole variety of remedies which we'd regard as quack remedies, but in those days were very serious. They included things like prussic acid, croton oil, port and soda, mustard, belladonna, opium, and of course champagne. There were various thoughts and theories about cholera and its cause. Indeed, at the beginning, it was not even thought to be a contagious disease.
2 out of 3 people who contracted cholera died. The epidemic of 1848 claimed the lives of 14,000. Communities on both sides of the river were hit. The spread was rapid and deadly. In Bermondsey, South London, 1 person in 30 perished. The hospitals were full of shrieking and dying victims with no prospect of relief or cure.
When the theory of contagion took place, the main thought as to how to spread was through the air, the miasmic theory. The smells, the odours that were present in London throughout that time were thought to be very important in the spread. This resulted in very many different public health measures being suggested, such as burning tar in barrels to purify the air.
The miasma theory, implausible though it may seem today, was widely believed at the time by luminaries such as Florence Nightingale and by policymakers such as Sir Edwin Chadwick.
In 1842, Edwin Chadwick carried out an extensive survey of London housing conditions.
When I have occasion to visit their rooms, I find that they have a scant supply of water in their tubs. When they are washing, the smells of the dirt mixed with the soap is the most offensive of all the smells I have to encounter. Various forms of disease are aggravated, chiefly amongst the labouring classes, by atmospheric impurities produced by decomposing animal and vegetable substances.
The report was detailed and well-intentioned, but tragically misguided. Chadwick too bought the miasma theory, the spread of disease through the air as a smell. To get rid of the smell, he urged that cesspits be emptied via sewers into the river system.
Following Chadwick's recommendations, a new Public Health Act was passed in 1848. For the first time, all drains and cesspits had to be connected directly to the sewer, and they set up the Metropolitan Sewer Commission to oversee the task.
Between 1848 and 1854, 6 commissions of sewers struggled with the problem of London's sewage. But they had neither the authority nor the money to enable them to do it, and they struggled with the problem for 6 years, at the end of which time they had come up with a number of designs that really achieved virtually nothing.
And while they argued, the people of London died. The bodies were taken to burial pits and cemeteries. In many cases, the springs for the drinking supply ran right through the graveyards, further spreading disease. But even now, the Sewage Commission still stuck to the belief that it was smell, miasma, that spread the cholera.
Not everyone accepted the theory of miasma. Dr. John Snow for one. Now, he was a pioneering anaesthetist who lived here in Soho. He was the first person to use ether and chloroform. In fact, he was even allowed to practice the new technique on Queen Victoria. In a leap of imagination that characterizes a great scientist, his theory was that cholera was waterborne, not airborne.
Dr. John Snow noticed that cholera occurred in some houses, but not others. On further inquiries, he found that the houses in which cholera were occurring all took their water from a single pump. The pump was situated in Broad Street.
What local people didn't know was that the pump water was teeming with cholera bacteria. Contaminated feces from cholera sufferers was leaking into the well from nearby sewage, because 28 feet below the pump, the local sewer was only 6 feet away. On the south side of Broad Street, 48 houses out of a total of 49 were affected by cholera. In just a fortnight in the immediate area, 500 people had died. Snow also noted that the local brewery had no deaths at all. The men there never drank the water, they stuck to beer. 3/4 of the residents fled their homes from this new plague. Only those who were too ill or too poor remained.
Dr. Snow took prompt action. He persuaded the parish authorities to remove the handle from the water pump. Now, no handle, no water, and hey presto, no more cases of cholera. The outbreak had been contained. Here in the heart of Soho, there's now a facsimile of that pump as a monument to a great man.
But John Snow was ignored. Some even called him a crank. It would take another 30 years to prove conclusively that cholera was waterborne. Appalling smells assailed the nostrils of Londoners, and miasma remained the most popular theory.
Ripe, raw sewage continued to pour into the drains and watercourses of London, and of course into the River Thames. Thousands were dying of cholera. For the poor in particular, it was a time of terror. There was one thing rich and poor alike could not escape, and that was the smell from the river, the stench. It was like living above one vast, massive latrine. 4 years later, 1858, came a turning point. There was a great stink brewing under the windows of the House of Commons itself.
A carton of Knorr V soup contains up to 3 of the 5 daily portions of vegetables you need. How you get the other 2 is up to you. V soups from Knorr.
Attention, please. Is there a doctor on board?
Hey, Turtle! Are you eating a sweet? Yes, I am. Don't! I apologise. Can I have one?
Give the dog a phone now and see how much you could save on car insurance.
Hey, girls! Cheers! Here, Bess, you want one? There you go.
It's the hint of mint in the chocolates that makes new Mingles
You got the chocolate?
so massively Moorish.
No, there's the hubba.
You just can't eat a single Mingle.
Looks like it's nearly time to change our Brita filter cartridge.
How do you know?
Because that memo thing is telling us.
Brita is clear from the taste.
What have you been up to, Mr. Moneybags?
It's okay. I put it on the credit card.
The credit card?
Don't worry. It's our new Capital One No Hassle Platinum card.
The Capital One No Hassle Platinum Card with 0% for 6 months, a low long-term APR of 11.5% and no fraud liability.
What's in your wallet?
For centuries, people confined their dining to dining rooms, hampered by convention and tradition. Then along came a Live Unlimited trend called noshing. More spontaneous, and it had its own song.
I prefer to nosh. I prefer to nosh. I prefer to eat relax. Vegetables and meat relax. I don't say I'm common. I don't say I'm posh. I prefer to nosh. Oh my gosh. I prefer to nosh. It's time to live unlimited.
Victorian London, mid-1850s. The world's biggest city at the heart of the world's richest empire. But the capital was in a state of crisis. Raw sewage in the rivers was contaminating the drinking water. And on the streets, terror, as each outbreak of cholera claimed further victims.
June 1858 was one of the hottest summer months on record in London. The temperature got into the high 20s Celsius and it stayed there. For the Times newspaper, the Thunderer, campaigning on the issue of a filthy Thames, it wasn't nearly hot enough.
The Times was campaigning for sanitary reform. If it got hotter and the smell worse, then surely MPs would be forced to back a new drainage system for London.
What a pity that the temperature fell 10 degrees yesterday. Parliament was all but compelled to legislate upon the great London nuisance by the sheer force of the stench. The intense heat had driven out our legislators from those portions of the building which overlook the river. A few members bent upon investigating the matter to its very depth ventured into the library, but they were instantaneously driven to retreat, each man with a handkerchief to his nose. We are heartily glad of it.
The River Thames had become an open sewer. 12 million cubic feet of human effluent flowed into it every single day. By 1858, there had been 3 major outbreaks of cholera. The rank, fetid smell, which of course they believed spread the disease, was unendurable. They had a name for it. They called it the Great Stink.
It's very hard for us to imagine what the River Thames smelt like. If you can imagine a really filthy public lavatory that hasn't been cleaned or flushed, and you're perhaps standing inside the cubicle, that might give you some idea of what the smell would have been like for people standing near the River Thames.
In 1851, the new Houses of Parliament was opened, and the ventilation system required pulling air across the terrace down into the basement, and then fans pushed it up through hollow cast iron floor plates in both the Commons and the Lords. And debates had to be terminated. People left the Commons with scarves over their mouths. And you could say, in fact, that the River Thames itself was the most effective lobbyer of Parliament. Once the problem was delivered into the Commons and the Lords, something had to be done.
The stench got worse and worse. The curtains had to be coated with a deodorizer, chloride of lime. The Commons even considered moving Parliament to sweet-smelling Henley upriver. The Times crowed that now MPs feared for their own safety there would finally be legislation. They held a vigorous debate, and at last there was a head of steam for reform. Just 1 month later, the new Chancellor of the Exchequer, Benjamin Disraeli, introduced an act to tackle London's sewage crisis.
The Great Stink concentrated the minds of the MPs wonderfully. In just 16 days, they'd made a bill into an Act of Parliament, giving the new Metropolitan Board of Works the powers and the money it needed to start tackling the problem. All they needed then was a chief engineer. Cometh the stink, cometh the man. They appointed my great-great-grandfather, Sir Joseph Bazalgette.
Bazalgette was a short, asthmatic, obsessively hard-working man who served his engineering apprenticeship on railway and sewage schemes. He joined the Metropolitan Sewage Commission in 1849 as Deputy Chief Engineer. In this way, he got first-hand experience of London's problems. Just 3 years later, at the age of 39, he was put in charge of the commission. It was an unexpected promotion.
He had taken over as chief engineer to the commissions when his predecessor died from overwork, and therefore he had a good knowledge of London's sewage problems. Also, he had some pretty impressive referees. One of his referees was Robert Stephenson, the great railway engineer, and the other was Isambard Kingdom Brunel, and they don't come much better than that. Bazalgette faced the problem of building a sewerage system beneath the streets of what was then by far the largest city in the world. It is very difficult for us to imagine now the size of that task. It was the biggest civil engineering project of the 19th century, possibly the biggest civil engineering project ever, under the control of one man.
In August 1859, Bazalgette was allotted £3 million by the government, hundreds of millions today. He issued the tenders and appointed contractors to recruit 22,000 labourers, who duly began the task of digging up the streets and parks of London. The city is of course built on the banks of the Thames. The river's valley naturally directs rainwater down its slopes towards the river. Gathering the best ideas of the day, Bazalgette designed a herringbone system of sewers which used this natural gradient. London's waste would be intercepted by larger sewers running west to east, fed by a network of smaller sewers. He was to construct 5 of these large intercepting sewers, 3 to the north and 2 to the south. They ran parallel to the Thames, out to the east of London. There the waste could be dumped at high tide into the river and swept out to the North Sea.
Bazalgette left little behind him of a personal nature, no diaries, scandalous or otherwise. For what there is in this vault underneath Parliament Square, deep in the heart of London, are his meticulous plans and drawings for his sewage system. So here we have the Bible for London's main drainage. Just imagine the ambition, the magnitude, the complexity of the task Bazalgette set himself. Here's one book of detailed plans, there are at least 50 others. And they go into enormous detail on how he was going to deal with all the hazards he had to, crossing hundreds of roads, rivers, railways, canals. This particular one, crossing of Eastern Counties Railway main line. And it goes down into extraordinarily meticulous detail, even specifying the design of the bolts and the nuts he needed manufactured.
From his offices in Soho, Bazalgette coordinated his team of engineers, appointed the contractors and agreed their rates. 2 shillings and sixpence per cubic yard for digging, 6 shillings and sixpence for tunnelling. No bill was paid without his personal authorization. There was no modern machinery. The labourers worked by hand with picks and shovels to remove in all 3.5 million cubic yards of soil, 900 Olympic-sized swimming pools today. For the sewers, Bazalgette could have specified factory-made pipes, but he was decidedly a brick man. More expensive, but much more durable.
The advantage of building in brick, of course, is that you're actually constructing your own pipes as you go along. The brickwork can be tailored to changing conditions. And they were grossly over-designed by modern standards, but that's why they're still working today.
It wasn't just the brick design that accounted for the system's longevity. Bazalgette took the risky decision to use a new type of cement.
Portland cement had been around for some time, but it had a reputation for being unreliable. Bazalgette knew that Portland cement, if it was made in the right way, was stronger than brickwork and actually grew stronger underwater. So he instituted his own quality control procedures, and he had a clause in one of his contracts that said that any Portland cement that failed his quality control procedures was, in his words, to be peremptorily removed from the site forthwith.
Bazalgette also devised methods to reclaim land from the Thames. Piles were sunk in the bed of the river, and the gaps between them were plugged with earth and clay, forming what's known as a coffer dam. The water behind was then pumped out, leaving a dry area, in which it was safe to build the new embankment.
Bazalgette's biggest problem was the low-level sewer, which is the final barrier protecting the Thames on the north bank. Bazalgette created his own land by building the Victoria Embankment between Westminster Bridge and Blackfriars Bridge. In the process, he reclaimed 35 acres of land from the Thames. It provided a route for the low-level sewer, which runs along by the Thames. It provided a route for the Underground Railway, what is now the District and Circle line, which was being built at the time. And it also provides a nice green space in the heart of London.
Although the original plans were for a 3-year build, it eventually took 18 years to complete the extensive system. The works caused chaos, far worse than your average roadworks today.
The disruption of horse-drawn traffic on London streets during this thing was horrendous. There's absolutely no doubt about that. And you have to remember that Londoners, virtually at the same time, were having the railways constructed into the heart of the city, viaducts, cuttings, tunnels, at the same time as Bazalgette and his team were digging up streets and putting in the sewers. It must have been absolutely horrendous. Bazalgette, I think, was the first person to mention the word traffic jam.
This toilet is a perfect tribute to Sir Joseph Bazalgette. In fact, we've got a lovely picture of the old boy in the tiles on the wall. Of course, the toilet itself depends on his sewage system, and appropriately enough, it's perched on his Victoria embankment. Now, if you see the legend above his head there, Flumini Vincula Posuit, that loosely translated means he put chains across the river. He did indeed. It was a massive undertaking.
One newspaper described his work as the most wonderful work of modern times. And the Observer, with perhaps unconscious humour, wrote, "Every penny spent is spent in a good cause." So his work was greatly appreciated by the inhabitants of London, who realised how important it was and what a difference it made to their lives. I think one of the reasons that he didn't leave any personal papers or a diary was that he was a bit of a workaholic. We know from his own account that he worked very long hours, that he often didn't get to his home in Wimbledon until the early hours of the morning, and at one point he actually had a breakdown through overwork. He was given 3 months off work, but was back at his desk within 4 weeks, which perhaps says something about him.
Well, it's the hottest day of the year, and it's quite a good day to do a striptease because it's about 75 degrees. Unfortunately, in a minute, I have to put on quite the thickest safety suit you've ever seen, and it'll be my first trip down into my great-grandfather's sewers. And that I'm very interested to see. I've seen photographs. They look absolutely wonderful, cavernous. I've never inspected them, so it's going to be a very exciting experience for me.
Can I pull you up?
Yep.
Put your arms through.
Thank you. Oh! I might be speaking in a rather high voice due to the tightness of the straps in my nether regions. Anyway, that's me ready to go, is it?
Yep.
Right, we're off.
This is one of the main trunk sewers of Bazalgette's original system, at Wick Lane in East London. In place of the traditional canary, we're given a bleeping gas monitor to warn of deadly methane. And the protective clothing is in case I fall over in the sewage flow.
So here we are, 30 foot down in the Northern Outfall sewer, part of Sir Joe's original system. And the first thing I have to do is step into the sewage itself. Here goes. Yep, not too deep, I'm happy to say. And look down here. What you can see here in the water floating past me is everything Londoners would prefer to forget after they flush it. Now the next thing is, what does it smell of? Well, mostly smells of ammonia. The sort of smell you get from raw kidneys in the butcher. You know, that sort of smell, I don't know, tinged with a few other things, like when we used to make stink bombs as kids. So if you move along very gingerly in here, because you don't want to fall over, you can see the wonderful brickwork that Sir Joe designed and commissioned. And the bricks were specially designed. They were a new sort of brick in a special kiln in the Midlands. And of course,
He also experimented with the new Portland cement, which was very robust, and he imagined it would stand the test of time. Well, it has, because 140 years on, his system, which he designed for 2.5 million people, is now serving 3 times as many. And it may be a sewer, but I think it's absolutely beautiful.
In all, Bazalgette built more than 500 miles of main trunk sewers and 13,000 miles of smaller sewers. The system was designed to handle both human effluent and rainwater. During storms, the levels here rise dramatically, and the storm relief channels divert the extra flow into the Thames. They're still in use today.
Now, the genius of Bazalgette's system was that it used gravity to move the muck out to where it needed to be. So from the west of London right through to the east, this flow of sewage is gently flowing just by gravity, because he dug the sewer on a very shallow incline all the way across. And from here, it goes out to the banks of the Thames, east of London.
But because of the gradient, the sewage arriving at the eastern outfalls was 30 feet below the point where it needed to be discharged into the river. Another huge challenge. Once again, Bazalgette came up with a grand solution, one that would bring the royal family into contact with London's waste.
FreeServe Anytime gives you a groovy 1 month's free trial. Be FreeServe. Call 0800 970 8890 now.
It's around the eyes wrinkles become most visible. I trust Revitalift Eye from L'Oreal, anti-wrinkle plus firming.
Enriched with pro-retinol A nanosomes, Revitalift smooths the eye area in just 1 week and firms the skin. Revitalift Eye Targeted Action from L'Oreal.
Because you're worth it.
Introducing the new Airwick glowing candle from Haze. A truly magical light infused with real perfume to make your whole room a place of relaxation. Airwick from Haze. Fragrances that change your world.
If you're like me, you hate having your teeth out for long. Real cleaning doesn't come much quicker than this baby. With Sterident 3 minutes, active oxygen bubbles go everywhere, cleaning more effectively than any toothbrush. 3 minutes of powerful antibacterial activity, and my teeth feel spotless. Oh, yes. Sorry, mustache. Got to catch the morning canoes. Sterident 3 minutes. Get your teeth into life.
Do you hate wearing glasses? Or find contact lenses inconvenient and uncomfortable? Like me and thousands of others, you could find the answer here with laser eye treatment from Ultralaser. There are no injections and you can be on your way home within the hour. Ultralaser has already performed more than 50,000 treatments and is the country's longest established laser eye clinic. For a free information pack, call 08000 923 925 or visit ultralaser.com. Take a fresh look with Ultralaser.
Experience the enchantment as Disney on Ice proudly presents Beauty and the Beast. Belle, Beast and all of their friends from your favourite love story are live on ice. Disney on Ice proudly presents Beauty and the Beast. An enchanted fairy tale awaits you. Playing at the National Indoor Arena from the 30th of October to the 10th of November.
Isn't it brilliant?
Thanks.
Only 2 more rooms to go.
Save a third on Crown Pure Brilliant White Emulsion. For brilliant price decorating ideas, Homebase.
Philips. Oh, that's very nice. Flat screen, video, DVD player. Of course, Pete absolutely refuses to pay extra for a top brand like this. Well, so does Stuart.
Philips 32-inch TV package for under £900, 28-inch version for under £700.
Oh, fish-based. How unusual.
Would you spot it as easily if your money were in the wrong place? At the Woolwich, we can introduce you to an independent advisor trained to find the right place for your money.
Thanks, Mum. Daddy. Chips.
Oh, little girls.
Chips.
McCain oven chips, the obvious choice.
The journey of the modern turd is much the same today as it was in Victorian times. From your toilet, out of your house, into the local sewer, from there into the trunk sewer, and then into the main intercepting sewers that head out to the east of London. South of the river, the effluent terminates at Crossness near Woolwich, around 10 miles from the city centre.
By the time they got the sewage east of London, they had a problem. It was 40 feet below the level of the River Thames. They had to find a way of raising it so they could drop it into the Thames at high tide and it would go safely out into the North Sea. In a magnificent engineering feat, they built steam engines to do the job. 4 of them are here and 1 of them's being restored. And as evidence of their great pride in public works, they actually named the engines after members of the royal family. One was called Queen Victoria. And here, I'd like you to meet her husband, Albert, Prince Consort.
The 4 Regal beam engines were the largest of their day, designed to pump 480 tons of sewage per minute. On the 4th of April 1865, there was a grand ceremony to start the magnificent engines, with Albert Edward, Prince of Wales, presiding.
When Crossness was opened, a great banquet was held, at which speeches were made, toasts were proposed to the Metropolitan Board of Works, to Sir Joseph Bazalgette, to the royal family. It was a great occasion. There was no doubt at all in the mind of the Victorians just what an important task this was.
By 1875, the drainage system was finally finished. Bazalgette had worked tirelessly, heroically, for 18 years to complete his grand design. Cholera and typhoid were all but defeated, and the Great Stink was banished. All thanks to Sir Joseph Bazalgette's brilliantly simple sewers.
Sir Joseph had completed one of the great feats of 19th century engineering, and he had every reason to be very proud of himself. But was he? Well, there is a clue here at the Crossness Engine Works where he allowed himself one small piece of vanity. He commissioned a piece of masonry in his own image. It's one cheeky, immodest monument to his achievements. Sir Joe was knighted in 1874 for a job well done, and later made Companion of the Bath. He retired to Wimbledon, where he died in 1891. And he was buried here in this Wimbledon churchyard, where his grave, obscured by ivy, has been largely forgotten until now.
I think the reason that he was forgotten for so long is that most of his great works are invisible. The sewers are invisible. We don't think about them. I think Sir Joseph Bazalgette was one of the very greatest Victorian engineers, possibly the greatest of them all. The fact that he eliminated cholera and typhoid from London and thereby saved thousands of lives, the fact that virtually the entire system that he built is still in use, I think speaks for itself.
Bazalgette died 110 years ago. London in the meantime has become massive. His system is still coping just about, but there are things down in the sewers that Bazalgette could not have imagined in his wildest dreams.
In Bazalgette's day, the effluent arriving at East London went straight into the Thames. Then, it was entirely made up of organic matter. But now Thames water has to cope with a whole range of materials that we flush down there, including 600 million cotton buds and tons of sanitary ware and condoms every year. The main task is to turn 4,200 million litres of sewage each day back into drinking water. Up until 1998, the sewage solids were separated and put into sludge boats and dumped in the sea. New European directives brought an end to this method of disposal. The water people had to think of new ways of dealing with our waste. Now the non-biodegradable matter is used for landfill. Your new local golf course may be built on a base of condoms and old nappies. And about half the sewage sludge is recycled as an agricultural fertilizer.
So, once again, sewage is being used productively. Partly when treated, it's now combined in garden compost products. And when burnt, it also produces electricity in Thames Water's sludge-powered generator.
At Crossness's new futuristic incinerator plant, sewage is squeezed to get rid of all the water. The result is a huge sludge cake that can be burnt to fuel an electricity generator. This produces enough power to run a town the size of Windsor. Today, it's also possible to start the recycling process from the moment we sit on the throne. Latest toilet technology offers the compost loo. You can process your own feces and urine for the veggies on your allotment. A virtuous circle.
Sewage is not a subject that we discuss very much, is it? If we have a blocked drain and we start getting sewage up in our homes, we are very grateful to the local plumber for sorting it out, but otherwise we prefer not to talk about it. Well, if you think of the Victorians, they didn't just have sewage coming up into their homes, they were actually drinking it. It was a subject of great interest to them, far more than it is to us. And in a sense, it's a tribute to Sir Joseph Bazalgette that we don't think about it. He's dealt with it for us.
From diseased cesspits to eco-design icons, in our quest to get rid of our ordure, we've come a long way. But when we flush the loo, we should still remember those sewers beneath our feet and say, thank you, Sir Joe.
With the downfall of prominent figures hitting the headlines at the moment, 5 brings you the story of Jonathan Aitken and Lord Brocket, 2 very different aristocrats who had it all and then...
100 graphic artists from around the world have each produced a poster in tribute to a man that many regard as the